From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. And Nick Barris here on a Monday. I hope you had a good weekend. I did, but I'm glad to be back at it this morning. We've got a good show, one I've been looking forward to through the weekend. I think it's going to be pretty darn cool, and I'm going to invite all of you who are watching us either on the Plus or we're also streaming live on Facebook at newschannel5.com to message me questions, comments, or the like on a variety of topics, the type of things you would read about in this, the Farmers Almanac, and this is the edition for the year 2022. Farmers Almanac has been around since 1818, and I mean, there are some years where I just don't get a chance to look at it. Other years, I'll get it and I'll sit down and read through it. Of course, they also have Farmers Almanac that you can refer to online. But there is just so much interesting stuff in here. Everything from how you go about predicting what kind of season you're going to have during the summer or winter. Is it going to be a really cold winter? And by the way, we'll talk about what that means for Tennessee coming up in just a moment here. Great recipes. Some of them are based in, old folklore or family traditions, superstitions and the like. But there is the Farmers Almanac. And there's just a lot in there to talk about. And we're going to talk about that this morning with the editor of the Farmers Almanac, someone whose family has been involved with this for years. He's joining us from Lewiston, Maine, and we are talking this morning about Peter Geiger by Zoom. And it's good to have you with us this morning. It really is a pleasure to have the editor of the Farmers Almanac with us. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, and quite frankly, this is really a thrill for me because I was in Nashville probably 1999, 2000, 2 or 3 years in a row, and I love the city, and there was so much vibrancy to it. And I was even on Grand Ole Opry. I was on the stage, fortunately not singing, but I was on the stage and then was autographing almanacs. And I even had a sales conference for my company one time in Nashville, and it was such a good city, and had a good time. So thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to talk about the 2022 edition. It's the 205th Almanac.
Wow.
And yeah, we have a really rich history, and then there's probably a reason why we're still in business, so to speak, even now after all these years. Yeah,
so many publications have struggled and the like, and the Almanac is still there and going strong. And you're right, obviously Tennessee and Nashville, great place to live. And I find, having lived around the country, Peter, that different regions of the country maybe put more stock into certain types of superstitions or traditions or things. And I find, in a large measure, that's the way it is in the South. And I hope some will call in this morning with some of them, or maybe on Facebook that are following us. Everything from, predictions of the woolly worm or things along the line of, well, whether or not that groundhog saw a shadow. I know that's up in the Northeast, but a lot of that is what you'll see in the Almanac, a lot of very helpful information. Just for folks who maybe aren't as familiar with it as they should be, especially maybe some of the younger generation, sure, tell them what they need to know about the Farmers Almanac.
Well, it's a great way to introduce the publication. Basically, the Farmers Almanac has always been a guide to good living. It has been a publication that helped people from its very start, which was in 1818, and for the most part, it was called Farmers Almanac because that's what everybody was a farmer. But sometimes you get asked, like, is that the original almanac and so forth? But there were literally hundreds and hundreds of almanacs back in the 16, 17, 1800s. And our almanac really was to help farmers and then to help others live their lives. And in the last, 15 or 20 years, we really have taken a stab at how do you recycle, how do you reuse, how do you not use chemicals? I think what you'll find is the almanac kind of changed with the times. And for our 200th anniversary, which was the 217th edition, I read all the previous almanacs, and I put together little snippets from the different years. And only one time did it mention anything about politics, and that was 1828. We said that Congress spoke too much and spent too much. And then nothing ever gets mentioned about anything that was going on in the world. World War, Civil War, those 1860s, nothing ever mentioned about Civil War, nothing mentioned about World War I or II. My dad was in the South Pacific during World War II, and yet he still put the almanac together and never mentioned anything that was going on. So the almanac has evolved over the years. I think we've evolved to help people. I think the misnomer is that the Farmers Almanac is for farmers. I think it's a misnomer to think that it's just for people in rural areas, because what we do is we help people understand how you can raise chickens in your backyard, even in the city. How you can grow food. How you can grow food on a balcony. How you can grow food on a roof. We talk about topics that are kind of fun. I think one of the most popular aspects of the almanac is the full moons and the moon and that kind of astronomy information. So the almanac was started in 1818. It was handed off to a gentleman in I think it was 57, and then it was his family for 75 years. And then my dad took it on in 1935, and then after he got back from the war, it just exploded in terms of popularity. And so the important thing today is to know that our almanac is orange and green cover. It's called Farmers Almanac. We have a website, farmersalmanac.com. And so I find that many people want to still have the book itself, but for many others, they want to go online and be able to research things. I've got videos and I've got all kinds of things. So the purpose of the almanac today is to help people do things for themselves, not to use chemicals, and to be frugal, to recycle, and the things that I think are going to be important to this next generation.
Sure. And aside from online, like you just mentioned, where can people go to get the paper, the publication itself?
Sure. Well, we should be anywhere where there are magazines sold, but certainly Tractor Supply. Dollar General has a special edition that we do for them, and almost any supermarket should have it. So anywhere you see that, but just be sure it's orange and green, because that's us and not them.
Okay. And there's so much. I'm trying to decide where to start, and some of our viewers will guide us on this. But before we get to it, I think, and you mentioned a few of the things that people look at, and I want to get specifics here and give people some of the stories and tips. But weather seems to be a big part of it. And, we have a terrific weather team, and the morning crew, I'll kid with them about, okay, whether or not what they're saying squares with what the Farmers Almanac has said. The other day, I actually posted something about what the Farmers Almanac, was predicting for the winter here in the South. And it just went viral on my Facebook page because so many people are interested in weather. And as I flipped through this, I knew some of them. You talk about, what about aches and pains? Can aches and pains, your achy knee, predict the weather? There's something here about whether or not a persimmon seed, and of course persimmons grow here in Tennessee, a persimmon seed can predict weather. Now, you got to tell me, how accurate is this? And really, realistically, how scientific is it? And then after you tell us that, we're going to throw up the map and you can tell us what kind of weather we're going to have this year. How about that?
Sure. Well, first of all, we're told that we're from 75 to 85% accurate. So people tend to say we're 80% accurate. Now, that being said, I think, for example, last year when it was really, really cold in Texas and we called for this really cold stretch, we might have been off by a couple of days, but we're doing this thing 2 years in advance. We don't change our minds. We can't adjust things. So we do it 2 years in advance. And I think we do it with really good accuracy, and we do it by regions of the country. So you got these big geographies, but weather doesn't begin or end by a city or a state. So you have to kind of go with the flow, so to speak. So we have 7 regions, and I think we did pretty well last year, and we try to hit the big storms. And for example, Hurricane Ida, which hit Louisiana, we had that down for the day that it hit Louisiana. And so there have been many successes, and there's been some where we haven't been successful. But overall, we do a good job, and certainly do a good job on the overall what the winter's gonna be like. And then specifically for the day-to-day, people can look it up and see how we do.
And really, when you talk about the predictions, what are you basing it on? I mean, we hear some of these wives' tales and superstitions, the woolly worm and the like, but I mean, what do you base it on?
Well, back in 1818, our first editor was an astronomer, a mathematician, and a calculator. So he wanted to predict weather for the farmers because weather was so important. So he developed a mathematical formula that is applied to sunspot activity, planet positions, the effect that the moon has on the Earth, and that, and along with the fact that in 205 years we've only had 7 people doing the weather, has allowed us to do it with pretty good accuracy. So it's based upon a formula. Sunspot activity, planet positions, effect the moon has on the Earth. We have a page in the Almanac that talks about that, and it's also online how we do it.
All right, I'd like to look, if we can, and throw up, I think Mary Elena has the winter outlook for 2021, and there it is. It's on the screen, all right, Peter? So I'm just looking down in our neck of the woods, quite chilly, mixed bag of precip. What do you think? What's it looking like for the southeast?
Well, the southeast, just like you said, chilly, mixed bag of precipitation. So we talk about some showers. Showers, some really strong weather. December 8th to 11th, talk about widespread frosts. 24th to 27th December, so Christmas, really, really cold, very, very cold. But then we're almost saying this is a flip-flop because it's going to flip from cold to mild. So we start January off mild. We talk about some major storms the middle of January, and then February, but it's going to be cold, and then at the very end, a very big storm on the 24th and 28th. And in the middle of March, it'll be a big storm, but I think it's going to be rain. So I'm not terribly concerned about snow for Nashville, but I do think it's going to be a cold winter. We say chilly for you, but I think it's going to be a cold winter because, as you see on the weather map, it abuts the region that says chilled to the bone.
Sure.
And so I do think that that part of the country is going to get cold just like they did last year. Maybe not quite as much, but I do believe that you're going to have this flipping and flopping from mild to cold, cold to mild, but some real cold, maybe 3 or 4 real cold snaps.
Listen, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines. We'll get some of the comments from folks on Facebook and talk more. Some of the observations you've made over the time. I'd love to hear some of your anecdotes or stories on things you've come across. And we'll be back with more right after this. Stay with us.